Now, we're going to make a change in our schedule here. We're going to get EI give us a presentation on the three-story building. So, are you ready?
Thank you. Good evening. What we're going to attempt to do tonight is to review the project, the history, and talk about the options and the reimbursement and the costs of doing this project several different ways, and sort of go back in history to where we were when we started the project. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the different options that are available to the school district for your high school project. We're going to review some of the direction and decisions that were made through the project history, and then we're going to review the option details and costs for different scenarios, if we want to call it the three-story building or the original high school, Boyertown High School, and how that can be incorporated into the project and what the impact of that would be to the project. So we're really going to look at option one, which is the current direction that we were going with the project. And under there, we're going to show three different options of how to deal with the original structure. And then under option two, we're going to show the original structure incorporated into the academic program of the project. And we have two options that we're going to show there. And compare the costs of those and the impact to the project. So this is option one. This is to renovate the high school and to provide the necessary additions, which we'll talk about the enrollment and the square footage a little bit later. And we're going, so under the option one is without the 1920 and 1938 section of your high school project. And we're going to show then the impact of option A is to remove that building and provide parking. Option B is to detach a section of the building and maintain the building. And then C is to use it for another use other than educational purposes. Under option two, we're going to show the high school renovation project with the 1920 and the 38 section of the building incorporated into the academic model. And we're going to show it one scenario with it being used as a 9th grade academy, and another scenario where it's shown being used as the visual and performing arts academy. And then we're going to compare the costs of these different options. So here's a little bit of the project history. This comes back to the study that was completed for the project. We looked at this page was in the feasibility study. We looked at the building that was added onto over several years. It is PlanCon eligible, the entire building. So just a little bit about the PlanCon, since there was a question asked. The reimbursement in a PlanCon project is carried by the enrollment projection of the students. So it's not whether one building gets reimbursed or another building or new construction or existing construction. You get the same reimbursement for any project as long as you provide the capacity for the number of students that the enrollment projection is indicating. So every option carries the same reimbursement amount of money for the school district. The renovation cost of the existing building to do new systems in the building, as you can see here, was about $32 million to renovate the existing building. Construction costs without any additions at all, and this came out of our study.
Mark?
Yes.
Can I
Sure, let's.
yeah. By existing building, you mean as it is now, including the old section?
Including everything. Yes, in the study here we had it was built in 1920, addition in 30s, addition in 55, addition in 1977, an addition in 92, and an addition in 96, or a renovation in 96. So right here, this is looking at the entire building. And There you can see the diagram. It's a little difficult to read, but here's the first floor of the building, and then this is the second floor and the third floor of the original structure. And here's a slide that we had used on several presentations just to give you an idea of how the building was originally built in the 1920s. You can see the section that was built in the 20s, added on in 38, then added on in 55, and 77, and then the area over here in 92. The entire structure is eligible for plan-con reimbursement. So we went through the building and we did a detailed evaluation of the entire building, including all the pieces of the building. And we came back to the board and we presented in our study the cost that would be required to bring this entire building up to the condition of a new building. Now, one of the requirements of a plan-con reimbursable project is that you bring the building up to current codes and educational standards in order to be eligible for plan-con reimbursement. So we looked at the entire system. You can see one of the big cost impacts in the building is the HVAC, which is the mechanical system, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. You can see that's a big cost. The electrical systems in the building, codes, plumbing. So a large portion of the work that's required to the existing building is what we consider the infrastructure of the building. This doesn't include any additions to the building at all. It just includes upgrading, in a sense, the infrastructure of the building. And one of the reasons for that is because these systems are reaching the end of their life cycle. And if you don't replace them, you're going to continue to spend money repairing these systems, and they're going to be energy efficient moving forward. So that's why we looked at the infrastructure of the building as part of the study. So as we looked at that, the 1920 and the 1938 section of the building, which is 76,000 square feet, or about a third of the square footage of the entire structure, is costing $11,400,000 of the cost of that building. So it's costing, you can see, so this building from a square foot cost is higher than the rest of the building, obviously because it's the oldest part of the building. It isn't the 92 section. So clearly, this part of the building requires more work to the infrastructure, to the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and renovations include code upgrades and other things that are required in the building. So as we evaluated the building, I mean, that's pretty clear. The older part of your house takes more work than the newer part of your house to bring up to standards. It's older. So the 1920-38 section, just looking at that to renovate, we looked at that. If you look at that separately, that was about $150 a square foot, and we looked at what it would cost to build new, and the cost to build new is about $177 a square foot. So you can see the difference between renovation and new, and that's something we looked at early on in the project as we were starting to look at your educational program. And is it from a construction standpoint? And then we looked at the educational program part of the building and we said, how does this work educationally for the project? And you can see how close this becomes to building new construction. And this started to bring questions into the design team as to if we're forcing the educational program into this old structure, is it something that we should look at to replace that with new construction? As part of the plan-con process, any structure that is over 50 years old, we're required to write a letter to the Department of Education when we submit plan-con A and B, which the board submitted. Plus, the Department of Education notifies the Museum and Historical Commission that there's a building being renovated that's over 50 years old. We got a letter back from them saying that according to the state, this is according to the state, you can see this here, that it's highlighted in yellow, in our opinion, that due to the large 1992 addition, the integrity of the building has been compromised to the degree that it can no longer convey its significance. The Boyertown High School, key number 157398, is not eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. Therefore, based on available information, there are no National Register eligible or listed historic buildings, structures, districts, or other objects in the area of this proposed project. Had this letter come back different than this, then the question of whether this building could be abandoned, removed, or whatever would have been a different subject as we move forward. But the state said it is not a historical structure in their eyes. Now, obviously, the community can feel differently about that, but as far as the state historical commission is concerned, it is not on the historical, is not eligible to be on the National Register of Historic Places. This is an important document that we received and a requirement of the Department of Education. So we looked at the high school schematic design, and we started to look at a cost breakdown, and this is yes.
I'm sorry, I want to go back to that letter.
Okay.
So what I'm reading in the letter is that because it's attached to the newer sections that were added on, it can't be considered historic in the eyes of the state.
I think what the letters, I mean, if you interpret it saying there are so many additions and attachments and other things made to that historic structure that they no longer see it as historic significance.
If we detached it, could it then be considered? And I know you're not the state of Pennsylvania, but if that's the sticking point.
I think what they're saying here is probably if it was detached, it has more historical significance than it does attached to the large structure that it's attached to. But I can't interpret that for
Right,
them.
right.
I mean, that's a government agency.
Sure.
We could approach them with a letter and say, if we detach this, does it then qualify to be on the Register of Historic Places? And if it's renovated as a historical building, would it then qualify to be a historic place? If that's the desire of the community to make this a historic building, the state's saying, while it's detached, it has no significance. While it is currently attached, it has no significance historically to them. To them.
Right. And follow-up question, not that I would expect you to know this answer, because you're not on the state. Are there, if something is deemed a National Register of Historic Buildings, are there monies available to renovate a National Historic Building?
I think that's what we would have to do some research on that. Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't. Just like the grant that we're applying for now for your lead project, the $2 million grant that we're applying for is available now. It maybe if all the money's used up, then there is no money available for the next time. So I think we have to look and then you have to look and apply for money when it becomes available for historic places. But right now, it would not qualify for any of those funds based on their letter. So this is the high school schematic design project cost. And this is the building renovation cost, and this is the new construction cost. What we had, and then on top of that, we're looking at about $44 million in construction costs. And then just to review, we also have soft costs that are included in the project, which include fixtures and equipment, fees, permits, construction supervision, construction management fees, architect fees, and what we had looked at from the beginning of the project was a total project cost of all the soft costs, furniture, equipment, technology, everything, of $55 million. Another thing to look at is, as we went back and I'm just trying to go back to some of the things that we talked about as a board and a committee, just as we looked at this, you know, we talked about the fact that ninth grade was coming into this building. High school design recommendations for high schools that are designed not only by our firm, but other firms in Pennsylvania and the surrounding states. There's a high school design recommendation of somewhere between 150 to 200 square feet per student as you design a building. And we're looking at, we usually see an average of about 180. So if you're designing a building for X amount of students, you can look at 180 square feet per student based on programs, and you can come up with some rough numbers. You can see right now your building is about 370,000 square feet, and you have an enrollment of about 1,733 students. You're somewhere around 213 square feet per student. The project we planned, bringing ninth grade into the building, your highest enrollment projection 10 years into the future for 9th through 12th grade, showed an enrollment projection of about 2,500 students. We're planning 430,000 square feet. And you can see that we're planning at about 170 square feet per student. So the building that we're planning through the design team and the process we went through is a very efficient design because we're using 170 square feet per student based on your enrollment projection. You can see it. So it's a efficient design, and this is a check for that. Yes.
Classroom size on the proposal. Excuse me. Is it any different than the classroom size currently?
Most of the classrooms that exist, we're keeping their existing walls. So if there's a classroom now and it's 800 square feet, it's going to be 800 square feet when it's renovated. So a typical classroom is around 800 to 900 square feet. And
so the new ones are going to be in that range?
yes. Yes. Now some, like for some special subjects like science or other things, where they're larger rooms. They might be 1,500 square feet for a science lab. So they're larger. But looking at the you know, the credit to the administration and the high school design team with the teachers, you can see that the project we're proposing is an efficient school.
That means we are ending up with a lower number of classrooms. Since the classroom is the same size, a lower number of classrooms in the building.
No, we're actually going to end up with more classrooms than we have, quite a number more. I don't know the exact number, but what it means here is that the efficiency of the ratio of students to square feet in the overall building is more efficient than it was before.
Okay.
But we have more classrooms, a lot more classrooms.
My question was, comment or observation was very clear. What we're saying is that currently we have a certain number of classrooms, and in the future for the students we're going to have less classrooms per group. They'll be better utilized.
Right, the building will be better utilized. We're going to end up with more classrooms. We're actually putting ninth grade into this building, and we're designing it for the growth that's occurring in your school district. Based on the independent enrollment projections that were done by Pennsylvania Economy League, we're designing the building for a higher capacity in the building. So it will be designed for about 2,500 students to accommodate the growth projection 10 years into the future. And when we're all done, we end up with more classrooms, we end up with more library space, we have a different cafeteria, but the efficiency of the building in operation is less square feet per student. So it's a more efficient design. So this is the timeline of what happened on the project. On September 25th, 2012, the school board authorized the Plan-Con project on the high school.
Just a minute. Do you have a question?
Yeah, the new rooms you're putting in and the existing rooms, according to the PDE numbers, how many students per classroom?
Well, for a regular classroom, PDE allows their capacity is 25 per classroom. Now, Clearly, there's going to be some programs that you're going to have less students per classroom.
Right, but the rooms you're putting in, what are you building them for? The 25 that PDE is saying, or are you making them larger to accommodate more students?
Even if we make them larger, you still only get 25 capacity from PDE.
Is there no number per square foot per child, so to speak, or however you would say that?
In a room.
Right.
Well, for labor and industry, there's a square foot per occupant in a space, like even for this room has an occupant load based on the square footage per occupant.
I just don't want to see us build classrooms that we can't put more children in there if we have to then.
No,
That's my question.
let's say this is an 800 square foot classroom. If you set it up as a lecture area, you could get 50 students in this room. If you set it up with science tables, you're only going to get 20 students in this room. So the rooms have flexibility to be used in different ways. But regardless of how we use the room, I'm confused.
You're not answering them.
Yeah, I think what she's asking, like with special needs children, there's a specific amount of square footage that you need per child for the room. And I think her question is 25 students. They're not all special education or special needs children. Does that room need to be larger to accommodate up to 30 students? If it were special needs, you have the formula, you multiply, at least it used to be, where you multiply times square footage and number of children, so you know if your classroom meets the regulation.
For special ed needs, you need more square feet per student.
Right.
So you end up with less students per
So
classroom.
Ruth's question is, I think, Ruth, is like, okay, this classroom that you're building, can you put 30 students in? Not that that's what we would like to do, that's not it, but she's saying, would it be able to have 30 children in, or does the state have a regulation like it does for special needs?
In a regular sized classroom, you could put 30 students in a classroom.
Okay, what's
Just
a
like
regular size classroom? What's the
It's about
dimensions?
850 square feet on the average.
Okay.
And that's exactly what you have in your building now. So if you go into your high school now, you're going to see some classrooms are probably set up for 30 students, some are set up for 25, and depending on the subject, some may be set up for less, depending on and probably when students circulate, if it's so you have to design all the rooms so that they have flexibility to be used for different things. So we make all the rooms approximately 850 square feet. Now, if that's a special ed room, you're only allowed to put 15 students in that room because it's a special ed room.
Yeah, I was just trying to help
Right.
see.
What's the capacity of that room for students that's allowed?
Regardless of how many chairs you put in that room,
Right,
the state gives you a capacity of 25,
okay.
okay?
But you can put more in, you're not limited to the 25.
Let
Okay.
me try to clarify. An 850 square foot classroom, the state's going to say, for this project, we'll hold 25 students. But there's no regulation, the labor and industry might say, you can put 35 in there, because there's room for that many desks. The state only, when they look at the capacity of the building, they're going to say 25 for an 850 square foot classroom. For the plan, con, and all that.
That's right.
That, for plan, con purposes, it's going to say 25. But we probably have classes that have more than that.
So to get reimbursed for the maximum number of students that we could potentially put in there by 2020, we have to say 25 per classroom, we have to have enough classrooms.
In the
for that amount.
Plan-con forms, every classroom that is over 660 square feet gets a capacity of 25. Okay? Now, 660 square feet is too small for a room, and some people will say 850 square feet is too small for a classroom. But we made the rooms about 850 square feet in this project, which is a standard size classroom. They can hold, as Dr. Musso said, they can hold 35 students if that's what you desire to put in those rooms. This formula here is based on the Plan-Con formula that allows a capacity of 25 per room. So
sorry I started this, but my question basically is saying that we are better utilizing the rooms that we have because we have a ratio of students is more favorable in the rooms, right?
Right.
We're better utilizing the space that we have.
Correct.
Like I said, we used to go through and see blank rooms where there's no students at the present time, or very few students, and this will reduce that opportunity. That's where I was trying to get. I think that's a true statement.
That's correct. So this is the project timeline that we went through. September 25th, 2012, we were authorized to move forward with the high school project. We had design team meetings, and then around November 13th, we had a design charrette. We had, which I'll show you some, we had talked about different options for the 1920, 1938 portion of the building. And around the time that we did the design charrette, we started to look at the educational program and determined through the meetings that we had, as you can see going down the left side, that the educational program functioned better in a building that was more consolidated than was stretched out. And since the cost of renovating that building was about the same as building new, the design developed to show the academies more concise, and instead of having the music away from the auditorium, we started to look at the music rooms being behind the auditorium to support the music program. So we started to look at all those things in the design. And you can see the meetings that occurred. We had bi-weekly meetings with the staff, with the committee, and presented this to the board, and we began to work on this building, and it was driven by educational program. The design that we proceeded with was driven by educational program. And I'm going to show you how that program can fit into the old building. So that's not something that can't happen if that's the desire of the district and the community. But through the design process, it was determined that if you have a program, all those spaces that are supporting that program should be consolidated together so that the building functions educationally. That's how the design proceeded. So we did the design development, and here's where we are. We completed the Act 34 hearing. We have faculty and staff comment review period. We have completed that in the design development phase, and all the interior rooms have been laid out. We're in the process of developing construction documents. They're the actual bid documents. We're working on the structural electrical design, the site plan development. We met with the municipalities. The mechanical design, we're waiting to proceed following a grant application we applied for a lead project. That's a $2 million grant. And so we're waiting until we see if you receive that grant. And the design was submitted to achieve that $2 million grant. So this is the design where we're at. And the blue is the new construction on the project. And I know I've shown these a lot of times, and this is probably maybe, but I just want to make sure we look at this. So the brown is the existing building, except for the fact that this design where we're at now shows a piece of this building we moved in here. And as we talked about this site, and we looked at the site, there was some concerns about safety and getting a flow around the school for vehicular circulation, for emergency vehicles, for other things, and be able to get around the school. And so it was this, we discussed and proposed maintaining this historic structure, but removing this piece to allow for that flow of traffic and to create a better response for emergencies or other things that occurred around the school. And we also looked at two drop-off areas on both sides of the building and two main entrances, one on each side of the building, and both of those were set up as secure entrances with areas where visitors would walk through a sort of a check-in system, and this became more of a secure facility for school safety. And so then this is the design of the project that I was talking about, where you can see each color represents the different academies. And right now, your music department is over here, your auditorium is over here. One of the desires of that academic program was to have their support areas behind the auditorium so that they could prep for musicals and other activities, and all their equipment is in the same area. And we addressed each of the academic areas with your administration and with your teachers and your staff as to how that would function educationally. So the design was driven from that purpose. And then this is the second floor of the academies. And I know I've talked about these before, and that's not the purpose of this meeting, so I'm not going to go over these in detail. But this was then the west entrance to the building, just a rendering where we're at. And the next thing I want to just talk about is the options, the details, and the costs of the different scenarios. So that was option one. And design scenarios, once again, that we talked about. Option one is the high school without the 1920 and the 1938 section of the building as part of the high school program. Under there's three options you could do with that existing building. You could remove it and provide parking. You can detach the section where we had the driveway coming through and maintain the old structure as a historical facility and renovate it. Or you could provide another use for that building, whether it's a community use, it's a district office, it's some other use other than the high school. And then option two, I'm going to show you a design where we made it into a 9th grade academy, and where we also made it into a visual and performing arts academy. These are the cost options for those and the project costs. And all of these options are around the same cost. They're all around $55 million. Keep in mind, we're in the design development phase, so these are estimates. They're not bids. So we did square foot estimates. We looked at the systems, and you can see everything that we're looking at here is approximately within the same range of costs at this point in the design process. But we have put costs on all of them. So this is option one. This is proceeding with the existing design that we have on the building and removing a section of the building, remove a section and remove the existing building and demolish the 1920 and 1938 section and add parking. The question came to us, how many parking spaces does that create? Here is the design of the high school, the way we currently have it designed, and it's showing the existing structure of the old building removed, and it shows this driveway. We put this sketch together so that everybody could see what this is. This provides, I believe, about 85 additional parking spaces on the site. The blue is the new construction that we had proposed in our design, and the white interior is the existing building. Option 1B is the proposed design of the high school academic program with the separation of the 1920 and 38 section from the high school. We would provide separate utilities into the 20 and 38 section, and there would be no renovations or interior work when the new utilities are installed. So this is a diagram of that, and what we are removing is the area in this section in the center here, and we're maintaining the original structure of the building. Option 1B. And there you can see a diagram of that building. In a sense, this brings this building back to a more historical significance than it is now. It now would become a standalone structure. What are the advantages of that? I mean, there's a separation of 1928 30 section from the high school. We have separate utilities. I'm sorry, this is option C. This is the next option. The advantages come later. So this is option C, and this is this section of the building. And then we would renovate 45,500 square feet, same option, except this is option 1C. There you can see it standing alone. That would be the back of the building after it was restored. And 1C, we are asked to look at making it into district offices. And if the district offices would fit in there. The green area is the office space. The auditorium and the gymnasium could be used as community areas, boardrooms, or other meeting spaces. But that renovates it as a district office. It puts the offices on 3 floors. It's a little inconvenient as a district office, and I think one of the issues we talked about was the availability of parking if it became a district office. And that's the 3rd floor. So here's where what we look at is the costs and the benefits. Option 1A, obviously it enhances the educational program by having the academic areas all together where they should be to support the educational program. We think it enhances the vehicular safety, provides 85 additional parking spaces, which is an advantage on this site, and it reduces building maintenance costs by not having an old building sitting there. So we look at these as benefits. Whether you agree with them or not, there are things that we talked about in the past. 1B, the benefits is when that building becomes an independent structure, it now stands alone. The design enhances the educational program. We still have that vehicular safety around the building. We feel it restores historical significance to the original structure. It maintains the neighborhood presence of that building along the street. It keeps that sort of order and neighborhood presence. And the building could be available for sale or lease to an organization or the school to use it. And there's a construction cost of doing that. And then option C is similar as option B because the building remains as an independent structure. So this is a summary, going back to the costs again. What are the cost differences of these options? So we'll go into option 2, A and B.
By removing part of the 34 structure, would you be taking out the elevator, the stairs and all?
We'd have to restore that into the building, the elevator. We'd be putting a new mechanical system and I believe an elevator into that gym, that's correct.
But you're removing the old one,
Yes.
because that's in the 34 section.
Correct. But the cost here includes putting the utilities and the systems back into that building to make it usable.
And the other question I had, and I mentioned this before, did anyone, since you talked to the township, did anybody ask about a waiver for the parking spaces, since the 9th grade students obviously aren't going to be driving? To cut down on the requirements that the township was.
The design that we have now currently meets the parking requirements of municipalities' code requirements.
That
So-
wasn't my question.
Well, we don't have to,
We were talking about ripping down some of the 34 section for additional parking. Has anybody talked to the township about a waiver that we didn't have to have that many
you
parking?
don't need that parking. The design we have, without using that parking, meets the code requirements.
Oh, so that parking isn't needed?
It may be needed, but it isn't required by the ordinance. I think there's more parking needed at your high school that is beyond what's required by the ordinance. But the design that we have proposed, we have met with the municipality, and without tearing that building down, and without getting those 85 spaces, we meet the parking requirements of the ordinance.
Okay.
And we don't need a waiver on parking,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Mark, before you go into this option two, the C, I mean, that's somewhat intriguing. So if you go back to the green and for the offices, the layout, the site plan, yeah. So this would be if we moved the Ed Center into the building, correct?
And clearly, these are the existing walls in the building, so when we say office here, these would, already the existing classrooms and stuff, these would actually be divided up into other spaces.
Yeah, put a wall in or whatever.
Put doors in.
Right.
Right.
It's a very minimal
Right.
construction.
And the costs that we're showing are for full renovation, I mean, everything. I mean, so I think what we're saying is that, like, these are maximum costs. You could go through and say, well, we're not gonna do some of these things, but these are showing maximum costs, so, that would not only renovates the green area, but it renovates the gym, it renovates the auditorium, puts all new mechanical systems in, all new electrical
And
systems.
if I remember the number, that cost was $6 million.
I believe.
Is that what I
You guys
saw
can
as
help
the
me
difference in the?
About $6 million?
Okay. Would there be, again, just trying to think out of the box.
And keep in mind that, in order to compare, I mean, so we don't come in here and, like somebody says, well, we're not comparing apples to apples. We're looking at the high school being a full renovation. So we looked at this being a full renovation. As a board, you can say, well, we don't have to go to the full $6 million. We could do pick and choose. But we did a full renovation in our numbers of, just so that we're comparing the same things as we compare these.
So what I'm hearing you say is, worst case scenario, if we did everything was $6 million.
Yes.
Okay. Would there be enough room, and maybe you don't know this, maybe the administration, we got 3 floors. So have we given thought to the first floor being the community center? Maybe the second floor, I understand that, you know, we have a library in Boyertown that's really kind of crunched in, and maybe we can somehow move the Boyertown library to the second floor and work out something there. And then maybe the third floor, the administrative offices.
We didn't really get that far into planning this. We just looked at it and then we did a square foot takeoff.
So that way it's a multi-use facility for the community. So, to the point on parking, when you look at the front of the building, there and off to the left, so as you're facing the 1919, there's grassy area, and in the front there's grass area. So I don't know the zoning, could any of that be made into parking? Maybe not in the front, because you know, you could argue it could take away from the grass look and some bushes and stuff. But maybe on the side, could that be?
Which side are you talking about?
As you're facing the building,
Yeah,
the historic 1919 building,
yeah.
to the left, so as you go in, there's the
Vermont
sign
Road
there.
Street is-
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah.
there's some parking, I mean, there's a grassy area that I'm wondering if that could be made into parking spaces.
But currently, I was just checking the numbers here. Currently, there's about 85 parking spaces for your administrative center. Is that right?
There are spaces, we have
No, 20 in use, I'm told, each day.
25.
25 that are used.
20.
Okay. So,
Except with the exception when we have workshops here, and in the back conference room, more are used, but unless there's something at Coverdale, they're not all used.
so I think we'd have to go back, if you wanted to do that as a community center and as parking, we'd have to go back, talk to the borough about the parking requirements, because this would then, because there's an auditorium and a gym in that space, and based on the ordinance, the seats in those spaces generate parking counts per the ordinance. We would have to go back then and calculate the parking and see, and maybe they would give us a waiver to do that. But that's something we would have to look at if we want to pursue that.
How does the square footage of the office space in this option compare to the square footage of the office space here in this building?
You know that, Jim. You can look that up here. We'll check that and get back to you on that.
Right now, your existing educational center has about 11,200 square feet. The first floor of the existing building has 20, including the gymnasium and the auditorium. That would be 21,900 square feet. The second floor is 16,900 square feet, and the third floor is 6,650. So that's where the 45,500 square feet are coming up. Essentially, the center section that we have highlighted in green on the first and second floor is right around 7,000 square feet. So per floor.
Per floor.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're at the same square footage, and it still preserves the auditorium and the gymnasium for for meeting spaces or for community use. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll move through this. Keep going. So, C, I believe, and the benefits of that are very similar to one B. So, back to the cost summary, just to go back to the sheet, just to pull back, and then the next thing we'll look at is option 2 under this scenario, which is to make this building part of the high school. And option 2A and 2B is the high school and utilize the 1920 and 1938 section. And we look at it two ways. We look at it under A as a 9th grade academy, where you would adjust your educational program a little differently than the way it was planned before. And we wanted to see if a 9th grade academy would fit into that structure. And then under B, we looked at taking one of the academic areas, the visual and performing arts, and see if that academy would fit in that area. So a little summary, the high school now, we use the 1920 and 30 section of the building. We maintain the building connection. We do a full renovation, new mechanicals, electrical, everything the same as we're doing in the rest of the building. We now reduce the additions required to the high school, which goes back to the beginning of the presentation when we started the whole process. We now only need 60,000 square feet of additions. And we now perform a limited reorganization of the high school because of this, we're not able to group all the academies in the same grouping that we were driven as we look at the educational program. So what we're seeing here now is the high school academic areas, and then the 9th grade academy is renovated to fit into this building. And that's the second and third floor of the building. Making it a 9th grade academy. So the 9th grade would be on 3 floors of the existing building.
Mark, maybe Brett can answer. When you say a 9th grade academy, I'm used to hearing the entrepreneur, the arts and so on, and STEM. What are you talking about? Ninth grade, I've heard ninth grade center, a number of districts have that. Is that what this would be, like a ninth grade center, but we're just calling it an academy? I don't know, maybe.
What we did was we took
You guys just got it. Oh, I'm sorry, Ray, you wouldn't know.
We haven't had time, just so that everyone's aware, from the administration side. This is new information, and certainly we'd like to, continue to look at it, but we will need additional time as well to I think, explore further, some of those types of questions and answers. So I didn't want to mislead anyone as to, but we would need some time as well, just like I think the board members here today. So we're here to find out some more.
All right, there was a discussion or comments made to us that in the past that this had been looked at as a ninth grade academy. The question was, would the
Ninth grade center.
ninth grade center, okay. So whether it's a ninth grade center or a ninth grade academy, I guess maybe there's a difference in that. But we looked at whether the ninth graders could be housed in this area rather than in the rest of the building. So we end up with the same square footage of the overall building that we had before, because we're dealing with the same projected enrollment, but we're just grouping the spaces differently.
So then, what you're saying is the ninth grades would be all housed, they wouldn't be in the academies? They would be all housed in a separate center?
I mean, that's what, this isn't really like educational program that was presented to us. We just tried to see if it would fit in here, because in these public meetings we had, there were comments made, well, it could be used as a ninth grade center. So we took a look to see if it would fit in there, and obviously if it fits in there, then you need less additions onto the existing building. But it changes the whole educational philosophy that we moved through since we started the project.
Okay.
But it does fit.
I guess the other question I had is, somewhere in one of these packets I got, there was a whole bunch of rooms for the principal, assistant principals, and they were all at one place. So if we're doing the academy, I didn't understand why you wouldn't have, I don't know how the principals and assistants will be shared now, but I guess I didn't understand why you didn't have an office at the academies instead of someplace far away, as central. I don't see how that would be beneficial to the students.
Are you talking about the design, the original design, where they have the two entrances with the fences and stuff with the academies around it? Or are you talking now just about a ninth grade?
It was one of, no, because this is just new, but there was one of them I seen where all the principals were together.
Right, sort of like they are now at the high school.
Yeah,
Right, because it's for the whole high school.
right, but
They don't have.
are they
one
gonna
for
have a
academy.
principal per grade, same as we have now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that's an assumption at the present time. What we're doing right now may change when we go to the academy structure.
I mean, if you want to move in one of these directions or in a different direction, they would have to be studied more academically and educationally as to how this would work. So I think what we're analyzing for this meeting, we're trying to look at all the different ways and go back and visit what we had talked about before, all the different ways that this building could be reworked, at least the ways that function. And the other thing we looked at here is can one of the if we stay with the same academic model, the academy model that we were designing the building with, forget the ninth grade center, or ninth grade academy, but now we're keeping it the same way, which academy would most likely fit into this? We thought it was visual and performing arts. And we took a look to see, will visual and performing arts work in this area? And if we use the existing building and some of the adjoining spaces, and rework, we're looking at some relocated spaces and modified areas in the building. Just roughly looking, well, will it fit? And it's possible that we can make that work. It changes a lot of the design of the building, but we would now put visual and performing arts in that building. And I think this slide then shows the areas that would not be constructed. So in the option 2A and 2B. So by utilizing the 3 stories of the existing building, we would then reduce these additions that are now proposed to the existing building.
One's in blue.
The ones in blue.
Mark, can you explain the reason why you did the visual and performing arts when before the justification for that addition was that it was near the auditorium
Right.
and everything?
Well, now we would
Is it
keep,
just a cost?
it's really just looking because the music spaces are in here. And I think when we started our charrette, and we actually were like having our first meetings, we talked about the visual and performing arts, utilizing that existing auditorium space, their music area here. And I think as we met and we discussed, they said, well, we do all our performances in the auditorium. We should have all of our support equipment and our music instruments and everything that is there really at the auditorium in order to support that. So that was one of the reasons as we started to look at the design, we started to move away from using the existing building because academically, it didn't work as well as it did to put them over there. But we went through an exercise to help everyone address the issues of this building. So I think it comes back to what is the driving force of the school? Is it to address the academic program the way it should be addressed? Or is it to utilize space on the building? Because all of these options, as I mentioned earlier, come out to be about the same cost. Now, which one functions better, that's terrible, better as a school? That's really what we're trying to
You
determine.
didn't go to the academy.
Yeah, I need to go. I need to go. So the blue shaded areas, once again, indicate if we use this building, these areas are now not needed in the design, and they would be taken off the design and would be used in the existing building. So that's high school option 2A and B. It's the same whether it's a 9th grade center or whether it's visual and performing arts. Obviously, the inside of the building would be different, but from a additions onto the building standpoint, we still reduce the same amount of additions. Benefits of option 2A and 2B, it maintains and renovates the high school, including the 1920 and 1928 section. It reduces new construction by 76,000 square feet of new construction. The project cost comes out to be very close to the same cost as the other options. And there we go back to the option summaries, and you can see that we're still at the $55 million total project cost to renovate it.